There's some information on
I'm
this.
starting. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Buffalo. It's exciting to be here. I'm back from a retreat. I was on a Christian retreat, kind of getting back with nature, getting in tune with deepening my spiritual side. So it's great to be back. And I think sometimes I got to learn a little bit about myself, about when I was younger, some of the things, and explain some of the things that I did and make it make sense. It didn't make sense in the moment, but sometimes you got to understand the past to understand where you're going. And today I got someone who understands that better than most of us. I have someone who is a genealogist. Now, for the people on the outside, you may not know what that word means. It's a big word. I'm not going to speak too much. I'm going to let the guests introduce themselves. But I'm joined by the knowledgeable and very wise Miss Brenda Salter Brown. And so before we get into too much into the interview, I just want to ask, how are you doing? And maybe give a couple words to kind of get yourself introduced to the viewers listening.
Hi, I'm very excited and very happy for you to ask me to come on to your show to talk about genealogy, which is a great passion of mine. I love history, and to get into genealogy and to study family history, that's what genealogy does. It retraces your roots back as far as you can go. Many of us African Americans kind of stop somewhere, maybe just a little bit into the 1800s because of the records that were not kept very much on many of our ancestors back then, but we trace back as far as we can go to get insight on our history and to learn more about our families. My name is Brenda, like I said, Brenda Salter Brown, and history has always been a passion of mine. I love history.
And if I could ask you, why is history so important to you personally in your own walk?
Because it helps me to know about myself, and it also helps me to know about the places that I live and the places that I visit. I remember history being a passion of mine even back in grade school, learning about the earlier history, even though I pictured myself in that history, but I didn't picture myself in the right way. I didn't know. Very little was talked about slavery and different things of that nature for the African American. We learned about the Puritans, the Pilgrims, and the gold rush days, like that history that was really not my history. It was mostly the history of the country, but it did not reflect on my history, my true history. And I used to put myself in those places till I learned where my actual history began and where it was.
Now, if you're listening, you're someone who says, I have a history, I have a story, you can call in and join the conversation at 716-837-1112. But I think that's so true. Last week, I had a guest who was a Native American, and they were talking about how important just seeing yourself there is, being represented fairly. And I think sometimes, like you said, when we don't have an image for what success looks like, we're a persevering race. We've been through a lot, and seeing yourself really impacts your identity and how you move forward.
Right.
But seeing the change that we've came through, how we've overcame that. My ancestors were, people joke about it, but royalty, right? I need to believe I'm royalty to survive nowadays, right? I have to believe that I have greatness inside of me. And sometimes, whether you can't see it right now, just knowing that your past was great can make you feel like you have you've been here before, right?
Yes.
We're not foreign to excellence. And so I think sometimes when you want to get deep in something, let's say I want to learn a new skill. Let's say my toilet's being weird and I got to learn how to fix it, right? You got to kind of sometimes learn how it works before you can learn how to fix it. So before we get into these deeper questions, can you give the listeners who are just kind of listening a general overview of what genealogy is to get an idea of what that is and what you guys do over at the Buffalo Genealogical Society?
Okay, the Buffalo Genealogical Society of the African Diaspora was founded in 1996 by the late Robert Davis and Sonia Walker. And from that, it grew into an organization of many genealogists, many of that specialize in different areas. Like we have a DNA specialist, we have one that also specializes in Civil War, and she can give her name is Miss Scott, and she can tell you a lot about the soldiers and even explain to us about the different reasons why some of our ancestors were in the Confederate and not Union soldiers. As we know, when Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, it was not, he had a plan. It was more or less to help to win the Union. And by freeing them, that gave them more fighting people and more fighting power. The Genia, there at the when we meet every second Saturday at the Meriwether Library, we share on the research that we have done, and we also help people that come and want to get started, to help them get started, learn the resources that are available to them, and help them to start with a starting point. Sometimes people start with the starting point of the DNA. We recommend that you start with yourself in tracing who you are and tracing your family. And DNA it does play a part in it, but actually get to know yourself, know your family around you, and ask questions and talk to your ancestors or your aunts, the oldest aunts, and get the histories from them, so that you have that starting point to know where you yourself began.
I think that family is a word that we sometimes misconstrue. If you were not blood related, but you took care of everything for me and played that role of mom, I may want to trace myself back to that because that's what I identify with. And the question I want to start to kind of get into these deeper questions is, how does ancestry really impact someone's identity? How does knowing where they are, where they came from, really allow them to be a better version in the present?
When you trace your ancestry, you find out what your earlier family was like. You might come, I always grew up with a business sense, and I realized my ancestors were business people. They were business people. When I really look back and trace back to my family, even from the beginning of the slavery, my family is actually mentioned in the Alabama roots of Crenshaw County on the Salter Plantation. There was a Salter Plantation that began my father's family, and they were business people, and I hungered for business, and I even steered my daughter to become a business person and to be able to be independent and to work for herself, which she is actually doing. Also, ancestry also helps you to know the illnesses in your family. Sometimes we have problems or illnesses in our families that are unexplained. You might find in searching that one of your ancestors might have had that same problem, which was not really they didn't know much about. However, through research, it is better learned. So it really helps you to really know yourself, both health wise and also in what steers you and keeps you going. I was talking to some people the other day about DNA, and I was saying sometimes the things that we often look at people and we look at them very strangely, and we might think, oh, they're strange, they like this, they like that. I think DNA plays a part in that, because when you trace yourself back to the roots of Africa, you find certain tribes have the characteristics or the different things that you might see as beauty. I might not see it as that, but somebody, like there's this tribe that wears the white makeup all the time, and I've looked at so. And then you have the people that love to put makeup on. So right. You really look at that kind of stuff. Well, why does they see that as beauty? And I don't see that as that, whichever way in which they go, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
So I think that now that we know about DNA, I think that plays a really integral part in how people see life and how see things. What's strange to us is very beautiful and common to them.
In context, right? Context is the ultimate highlighter of change and of things that we didn't even know we liked. I know for me, when I look at older cars, right, I used to always be like, oh, they look so boxy and strange. But I started to understand the technological advancement for those cars to exist. Now I drive a boxy old car myself, and I love it because I think it's just, I appreciate the work that went into that to get it to where it is today. And like you said, being aware of that history, being aware of our characteristics allows ourselves to kind of visualize everything in the correct light, because when you're in a society where the history is so marginalized, right, when it comes to those specificities, I think part of it comes back to us, right? It is a reflection. We need to take that work sometimes to, if we want to know information, sometimes you got to pursue it a little harder. But that being said, I think it just allows us to, again, look at our features, look at our flaws and pros and cons in the right light, to not be so hard on ourselves, but more understanding and more curious. I think a curious stance is better than a critical stance upon ourselves.
Also, I want to also say that doing history has taught me to be able to accept people and accept their ways, and not to be so critical and not to be so judgmental on things, to more or less get to understand more about them. I'm more of a person who I don't just take things as face value, or take stereotypes as face value. I have a habit of just going on and talking to them about different things on religion and different areas, just to get a better and clearer understanding. So it really has helped me to grow and not look at people so strangely. I believe in learning about people.
Definitely. I think a lot of stereotypes are formed through history, right? So, and also how we view things. I know it was the craziest thing ever. I was in high school and we were talking about unions, and a lot of kids were saying, "Oh, we don't like unions." And I'm sitting there and I'm confused. I'm like, "What's wrong with unions?" But then it made sense. Oh, your father was a business owner, right? His grandfather was a business owner. Okay, I see how you have this stance. And so before I can jump on you and say, "You don't know what you're talking about," if that's all you've been hearing for the past 2-3 generations, like you said, it allows me to have that grace, that patience to say, I understand. And even if I don't agree with your perspective, at least I understand why you have it.
Right.
And what I want to ask you, kind of getting more on your perspective, right? We talked about the process, right? We have the DNA side, we have the asking side. But is that process of genealogy that you bring to the genealogical society, is that really just asking family? Is that the process? Is that the best way to go about it? Just asking family and listening?
It starts off with listening. As children, we heard the stories. We heard a lot of stories about our family. I'm a one side I'm a Salter, and the other side I'm a Craig. I'm which names I'm sure a lot of you have heard throughout the city. Craig and Craig Twin Bakery. Those were my aunts, and those were my mom's sisters. And Salters, I'm a member of Salter, and I also am a musician. So I like music. I sing, so which is one of our aspects on both sides of that family, on both sides of my family. But when you first you listen to the stories, and when you first start genealogy, like I said, you write down yourself, you go into yourself and you put yourself first, then you branch off into your parents, then you get the history from your parents to learn who their parents are and who are. You might start with first names, then you go on into the research part. Now, when I first started with genealogy, we're looking back into the 1990s. The internet was not very enormous as it was back then. I had to go to the church on Maple Road, which is part of the Mormon Church, because the Mormon Church is a very big organization on family history, and they have a large resources, and I had to order records of census records that were handwritten and order them through the Mormon Church. And looking at the handwriting and trying to figure out different things, I really didn't find too much until the internet became the records became a little bit more digitized, and that's how it all began. Now, one thing I want to tell you: when you start family history, you have to go in with the open mind, because there are secrets and there are things you're going to find out. Some of them that were never told, and some of them that are recorded in newspapers and different things. You're going to find out a lot about your family. So you have to, like I said, keep an open mind about it. And some things that your family might have wanted to keep hidden, you find out a lot of things. Like wrote about my grandfather who back in the early 1900s went to jail and had murdered down in Alabama, which is part of my history. But I had heard the story of it, and my grandmother had told me about it. However, when I did my research, that was when I really actually got to read the newspapers, to see the court, see what happened with the court case, and to actually know what actually triggered it. It's a lot of it. The information is recorded in our book. Have a book. The Genealogical Society have a book called Kindred Stories, which is on sale on Amazon, and you can also get it at the at Sharon Holly's bookstore. You can also buy it there. But it's a book of different stories on researches that we have all done about our family. But when you start to a better way to explain it, it's very time consuming and very enormous. But when you find or you hit something or you find more history, it's exciting. And then sometimes when I get into the historical part of my family or to be in the research, sometimes I have to put it away because sometimes it can be kind of overwhelming, and you're thinking back and you're thinking about your family and different things, and it can be kind of like a little depressing because they're not here anymore.
Right.
And then there's times when you wish you had talked to your earlier your grandparents and things more about their what was going on in their life. Like my grandfather, I have on my mom's side he was Native American. He was partly Native American. I do have Native American roots in my family. My great grandmother was a Creek Indian. She was a documented Creek. I always say documented because she received reparations from. She lived in Crenshaw in Alabama, down Marengo County, Alabama. That was where she was from. But she was one of they received the reparations for the Trail of Tears, and many of my family members moved from there over to Oklahoma. So I have cowboys in my family that actually participate in rodeos and different things like that. So doing the research, I have connected with them, seen what they do. And I also have famous people in my family. Ari Lennox is on my father's side. She's a Courtney Salter. That's her name. So her father, I have communicated with her dad, but yeah, Ari Lennox. And then on my mom's side, the young Virgil Hawkins, who we know him as I can't remember what his regular name, but he won the American Idol. He was the poet. Mm. He's on my mind. He's on my side. So when you go into research and you go into history, you learn a lot about your family, and you learn other family members that you have. Usually those are the on the side that I have uncovered are the siblings of my grandfather. Those are a lot of times you don't see those, you don't see relatives from that side, but those are siblings from my grandfather. I've even got siblings now from my great grandmother who was of the Native American, was Native.
You know, that's a wide web, and it's probably so. How do I describe it? It's not necessarily it's empowering, but it's what do you call them? Validating in your story that it's real, that I'm here, and that's so powerful. I think that the work that my family has done means something, right? It's bigger than just me. I'm a part of not an organization, but it's a large family. I know a lot of people go onto websites and other services such as ancestry.com or other things like that, and they run into dead ends, right? And it'll say, we don't know where to go any further.
Hit a brick wall.
Is that an ancestry.com thing, or is that just a general genealogy? At some point, you may find a wall where you can no longer go back.
Right. That's what happens in genealogy. You do tend to hit brick walls. Like even my grandfather, I hit a brick wall in finding his actual birth records. I haven't found that. However, I have went back on my my father's side back to the actual slave owner of my grandmother's mother. And I have a picture. He's my great grandfather. So I have traced back, I have his picture, and I have traced back to actually his slave schedule. And I have that. I have his picture, and I have my grandmother's mother's picture and my grandmother. So I was able to trace back that part. And the reason on Ancestry, I met a cousin who was also researching. So we have shared pictures, we have shared information. And one good thing about her from her grandfather, she took a lot of pictures. See, pictures are really very helpful too. And when you take pictures, make sure you document them. Let know what's happening even at the time when you take that picture, because as you put pictures in a book, you see pictures and you never know what's going on at that particular time. So it's always good to document pictures, and always good to share the information that you find, because even though I do it, I would like to see someone else actually take it on also. That keeps it actually going, so that the history is continually going back and forth. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. It's a grown, actually, you segued us right into the next point, actually, because with history, right, the difficult part is not just the record keeping of it, but it's the preservation of it, right?
Yes,
Making sure that it's not being lost, right? I can preserve my history perfectly, but if we forget where these books go in the move, we leave them in the attic on accident. Well, that didn't really do us much good. How do we look at genealogy in the future, not only as generations kind of expand more, because it's an exponential, I'm pretty sure, growth, right? As the generations go, you're going to have kids. It's going to get wide, right? Your branches get wide. And also, not only that, but just genealogists in the future. How do we look at genealogy as a whole in the years to come? And how do we make sure that it doesn't lose some of the history and some of these records that are so important?
Is by sharing. That's because you never know what's going to happen. A fire could happen. You could lose things. You share. And that's what we do with family reunions. We always consistently talk about the history, share the history. And that's where it all starts. Another thing too is what I always tell people, recommend, is that when we have to go, like when our children have children, and a lot of relationships do not always last. The parents separate, or a parent, they might not be married, and it's just where they have children. When you go to the baby showers, the best gift is to give that child, that baby, their family tree. That was one of the things you give that is really good, in addition to anything else, so that in case the relationship of the parents do not last and the child becomes separated from, they'll know a little about their family and about whoever the parent is that's missing that family, and know where they came from. So I always suggest that you give them the family tree. I have copied the family tree on pieces of cloth that could start a quilt or something like that, where they know that I'm from this person, this is my dad, and this is some family members. Because you have family members that are out there, and many of them sometimes fall in love, and they don't even know that that's a relative.
That's true.
Yeah, because I always tell the story of when I was a little girl, and I used to see this young man all the time walking around in the area where we were. And I knew his first name, but I didn't really know his second name. But it was like he had came down the street, and a classmate, and I'm very young at this time. And he comes back, and he has Raymond with him. His name was Raymond. And he says he's your cousin. I said, no, he's not. I said, no, he's not. And Raymond was saying, yes, I am. I said, no, no, you're not. No, I don't know. I didn't know. I had seen him at school. I said, no. And out of the blue, I hear, and my mom said, yes, he is. And I was like, wow.
That happens to us all the time.
Yes, it was like, yes, he is. And so she explained to me he was a softer, God rest his soul. He just passed not too long ago. He used to.
You guys have a call coming in.
Oh, okay. He used to drive a cab that had the word salt on the dome. It used to say salt. That was Raymond.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that was our cousin Raymond. He passed, yes.
I had another question, but I think you're speaking so much fire that someone else was joining the conversation.
Okay.
Caller, you should be on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Long-time friend of mine.
Oh, Mrs. Doyle, Dr. Doyle, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I just wanted to just make a couple comments. I've been doing my own family history for more than 20 years, and and I think Miss Brown will agree that when you do your family history, you have to have a lot of patience.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
You have to have a lot of patience. And when I was able to trace my family to 1845 so far, and my grandfather was, and there was a lot of farmers in my family history. So I wrote a book about all of that. But I just want to stop for a minute and I just want to, if you don't mind, I had called in about my essay contest for high school students about the fighting, and I just wanted to give the winners
Absolutely.
Of the contest.
Sure. Yes.
Yes. The winners were Ari Webster. She's going to receive $100. And Iman Shaw, $75. And they wrote their own feelings about fighting in the schools. And the awards program will be Sunday at 12:30 at the Meriwether Library. I just wanted to just let you know about these students, and they won the contest. They go to Burgard. So anyway, thank you. And so thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mrs.
And I'll
Doyle.
talk to you later.
Okay,
Goodbye.
yes. Mrs. Doyle and I met Mrs. Doyle. I attended a history session she gave, and she just really, to hear her talk about the early African-American history here in Buffalo, and it was like, oh, wow, she just really got to be. And then later on, I worked in the school system, and I was assigned to work with her. So I learned a lot about her and a lot about history working with Dr. Doyle. And she's a wonderful, wonderful woman. And she has taught so many students, and I have learned so much history from her and everything. It's always a pleasure to hear her speak.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sometimes people's reputations precede them. I've yet to meet Dr. Doyle, but I'll say everywhere I go, I hear some kind words. So I'm excited. I got some anticipation.
I actually thought on Saturday when I was in the library looking for a guest and getting a paper, when I saw this other lady, I was like, I wonder if that's Dr. Doyle. And I was like, ma'am, what's your name? Because then she told me she was in your group. And I said, I wonder if that's Dr. Doyle. But it wasn't. It was someone else. And I said, I am interested to meet who she is. She sounds like an amazing woman.
Heard a lot good, a lot of good things about it. To touch on what we were talking about before the call, but I do want to honor those two winners. It's good, and I think it's important that we acknowledge people putting forth efforts to be successful, not just in traditional ventures, but making sure that you're putting your voice out there.
Right.
Essay writing is a lost art. Writing in general, I'm a communicator, so I love all forms of communication. So honor to those winners. But that being said, like what you were touching on earlier, I went to a Christian camp over the weekend, and actually one of the people at the camp, I think we're cousins. I was like, nah, you're just trying to pull my leg. She's like, ask your mom. I had to go to my mom, called her. Sure enough, yeah, small world. It's a very small world.
It's very small.
We're heading to a break right now, but we'll be talking about that, how genealogy unites people as just general, as wider than just family, how it unites people as a bigger cause. We'll touch on that after we come back from a break. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanksgiving is
we're still live on here, but I think one of the things too that's pretty exciting is, like, I hate taking pictures, and my husband always always wants to take a picture. And I think that's really important. And I think the other thing that makes this conversation interesting is I think so often in the general public or the perception is when you succeed, when you see a person of Black excellence, it's an anomaly. And it's not. And even if we don't go all the way back to Africa, right here through all these things, I was listening to this book I was reading. I try to read 30 minutes a day. And it was talking about, like George Washington Carver, like how he was sold for a horse and was able to go into an environment to just explore and expand. And then they talked about all the things from sweet potatoes and peanuts. And all you hear about is peanut butter. Like you don't really hear about all of the other inventions and how he was sought after. Dr. Miles Monroe talks about how, your gift will make room for you. And all these people wanted him to go to all these places. And he said, no, this is my mission. This is my place. And I'm staying right here at Tuskegee. So I think that knowing this really helps us to be more proud as a people, to know that right in our families, there's some amazing people. And we don't always have to go back to the narrative connected to slavery. We don't want to forget it.
Right.
But in those times, what kind of amazing things have come out of that, us as a people.
And we're finding out too that everybody wasn't a slave. Some people were like indentured servants.
We're going back on. That's a good
point. So we're right back onto the show when we're actually talking on the live. If you want to hear some extra behind the scenes content, you can join us on Facebook Live. But also, if you want to get right into the conversation live, you can call in at 716-837-1112. I know you guys were having a conversation live. You guys can continue it on the air if you guys like before we go to the next point.
No, I think one of the points you said during the I don't even know if we're allowed to say that place, but the thing that happened that shut down the world, a lot of people were referencing, they were having arguments on Clubhouse, which was an audio app, about like we're not all slaves. Like my history does not lead to that. And I'm just like, my goodness, why do we always get into the minutiae as a battle? Can we just have this in a proactive way? What's the purpose? And you were just sharing some like actual facts. And I like to hear from people giving facts instead of opinions. So I would love to hear like everyone didn't necessarily come from slavery.
No, some of them were working, were indentured servants, worked as indentured servants, and some of them worked as slaves. But everybody roots does not always begin back as far as on the slave grounds and slave grounds.
Yeah, so I would like to even talk more about that. What's the difference between what someone would categorize as an indentured servant versus a slave? What's the difference, and be more technical?
They're like working off of a debt or some type of debt of some kind. That's my understanding of it. That would have been a good question for Miss Dr. Doyle. She would have explained it a lot.
I'm sure she'll call back. She might be listening. Dr. Doyle calls back.
But it was more or less like working off a debt. I view it as working off some type of debt of some kind.
Yes,
and despite those differences in those two different roles, kind of slavery versus indentured servant, what I wanted to kind of ask is, even though they're under the same umbrella, how does knowing about us, right, knowing about our genealogy, unite us as a people, right? I think sometimes with these divisions, right, we can have divisions outside of race, even within the Black race. I think the Black race is one of the most fragmented parts. We have city Black people, we have the people who would call themselves like thugs. Oh no, I'm from the hood area. I don't know these like educated. Oh, you speak white, right? There's so many different divisions. But how can us knowing our general understanding of where we all came from, despite the different locations, unite us deeper than where we are right now? Because I think right now when we look at other people, it's so many metrics to divide us by. Deeper than just you look like me is. You look at me, but what's your education level? You look at me, but where's your socioeconomic stance? But how can we all came from here create a deeper sense of unity than just what we are presently?
That's a very deep question. Yes. I know it would unite the family. It unites the family unit more so than it would someone that's not of that particular family. But and I think that's what we should really work to unite first, is the family, because there's so much division even within the family that the history would better get us to know each other and understand each other and each other's way of thinking. So that's where I think that's what I think it would be the main goal of it, is to do that, and then we can out with the other.
Yeah, I think one of the things too that I think about too, and we were just talking about that a little bit on the break, is so often, and I think I started with this even when we came back on the air. I just think that the standards, we always try to make our stand. Not that I don't have an issue when people are just like, we want to have these things that make us stand out so we can be proud as a people, but we have a rich history.
Right.
We have some really smart people. So stop thinking that as an African American, we can't be a doctor. One of the things, my first professional job, I worked at General Motors Powertrain. And one of the things that I was just like saying to people was that because it was the largest engine plant at the time with 3,500 employees, I'm not saying racism didn't exist, but there were some levelers where you can get a Cadillac, I can get a Cadillac, because we both are like making the same wage. Mm-hmm. Then people who had trades, that's the place where I saw like Black electricians and Black skilled trades. And I'm like, wow, like these people are making a lot of money. Like they have good quality of life. And I didn't even know those things because even my father-in-law who passed away, he was a skilled tradesman and no one knew. And I'm like, y'all don't understand. He had a specialty skill. That was a very, very, very smart man. Y'all might have this thought about him, what you might have thought about in the world, but like technically he was one of the smartest people. He had to know math. He had to know some things that y'all thought that we just know. He knew what a micron was. So I just think that knowing this information, it actually gets me excited because, again, I think for me, I haven't really been a fan of let's go to the family reunion, but even in our family, a lot of times my kids will say, well, I don't even know all my cousins, or I don't even know all my aunts and uncles. And Buffalo is small. Mm-hmm. Everybody's related some kind of way.
Oh, yes. In fact, a lot of people say, Brenda, you're related to everybody. I said, you just find out how your trees connect together, because people I went to school with, I find out how their tree connects into mine through marriage or something. Then the next minute, we're all related. We call each other cousin-in-laws, or family, because our trees come together. And one person in the family might have married this person, and that's someone that I know from, that's this. So one of my cousins, Michael Chapman, who's the pastor of St. John, he's a Salter, yes. That was my father's sister. His mom was my father's sister. So he brings all three, there's three units that he brings for our family reunion: the Salter, the Davis family, which is Phil Davis, who's the playwright that's here in Buffalo that has those different, Phil Davis. And then there's the it's three families, and we all have a reunion, and we call each other, we're all related, and we call each other family, because that's the unit that we have, all our trees, and we're not actually by blood, but we're by family connection. And it is a wonderful thing to do, to actually see the three, we all met each other, and to see all three of our families come together and celebrate and have a reunion. And see, those are the things that we do, because even sometime in a regular family reunion, there's not a connection there, because you have one, some families might feel more powerful than the other. So you can come up with those, have those type of things even within the actual family unit. So, but that's why I say it's one of those things. Knowing about your ancestors is getting the family unit to accept the family unit sometime too.
And I think when you think about the idea of love right within a family, that's kind of where I was getting at. When I know that we're all connected somehow, I may have a little more love and grace on the stranger than I normally would. Because when I say brother, even though I don't know you, I'm saying brother for a reason. When I say
Right.
sister, I'm saying sister for a reason. And we always talk about it's a small world. I think sometimes we don't act like it, right? It's a small world, but yet you want to be rude to the stranger that you think you're never going to see. That may be your family, right? And just thinking about it in that mindset of we all are connected. Buffalo is a really small city.
Yes.
It's a really small city. I call it a city town. It's like a city, but everybody in here just stays. We all know each other. And so we're close, closer than you think. And I bet your stranger is more alike than you are different. And that's not just for your stranger on the right, your stranger on the left. It's for streets, blocks, and ultimately the city that we inhabit. So I think that just understand that we are connected. There is a reason, there is a logic behind the fact that we all share similar characteristics, that we're going through similar struggles, unites us more than separates us, despite what we want to believe. So I just think that kind of to go back to kind of better frame what I was asking is just, I think that that's so important. And you answered that question because it is that connection, despite if we're blood or not.
Right.
Family is deeper than blood, I believe. Connection is deeper than always just blood or someone saying that we were coming back from the same person, same web, right? We can still be related in a different way. And so, like you talked about, history changed our expectations as well. You don't have to go far to lean on great. And even there may be some people alive who are great. But if you're just willing to go back a generation, expand a little bit horizontal, you may meet people that you never even knew are connected. Because like you said, some of the names you're mentioning are people that are recognized, honored, and now know, rather than just a distant person, like you said, someone who's almost, I think we see people that are great, we can almost see them as unhuman. Oh, they're different from me. They're successful with something different. No, they're like us, and we can be great as well. Right. And we all begin to think that we can be great, and our expectations change when one person is inspired for change. That changes a family. We change a family, change a block. We change a block, change a community. When we get a community of people empowered for greatness, I think that's how we begin to actualize the change in our people that we always talk about. We got to change our mindset first. But rather than looking at hope for the future, let's just look at the history of the past. We've been great. Let's continue to be great in that mindset.
You know, I talked about my daughter. One thing I didn't do was, I remember her telling me the first thing she wanted to do when she wanted to grow up, she wanted to be a truck driver. I was like, what? Are you serious?
That's a good job.
I know, back then, it was a mindset of me. But however, I never told her she couldn't do it. I was like, okay. And I prayed. I said, I just hope she changes her mind. So when she went into high school, she became interested in doing hair. She used to do her dials hair, and she became interested in hair. And it was there she became a hairstylist. She went to high school. She was at Lafayette and BBTC. So she did hair, and now she's a very big hairstylist in Charlotte. She moved to Charlotte. Her name, Lakita Johnson, and she moved to Charlotte, and she has her own shop, and she makes wigs and different things, and she's worked with cancer patients and different things. She's very reputable. But the one thing is that I wanted to always tell her, and I'm going to share this because I had her out of wedlock, and there was so much stigma about children out of wedlock. I'm a 50s boomer, so you can imagine the talk that was going back around there, having children out of wedlock. I always wanted to let her know she was very important, and that anything that she strived for, that she could do, and that I always wanted to be with her and be a steady influence on her. I'm a singer. As I said, I'm a singer. Twice I was asked to become a professional. I turned it down for the simple reason I didn't want to be away from my baby, my daughter. She's my only child. My daughter, I wanted to always be an evident thing. However, God has allowed me to be on a professional status. I have sung with many greats. I've worked with many great people, Marvin Hamlish. I've sung on programs with Gladys Knight. I've done a lot. I've been in movies. I've been movies and different things. So I've lived the life of somebody that has done it. I might not have the money they have, but then I don't have the headache either. But it's like to see how I have been an integral part in letting her know that she can do whatever she stresses to strive to do is been my joy, and that has been my reward enough. And that's the way I even when I worked in the education, I never told the children, no, if you want to do that, you strive to do that. And I always taught them about the decisions you make in life sometimes affect more than you. So make sure that you can accept the consequence of a decision you do. If you know it's wrong, don't do it, because you know that you can either do it and get away with it, or you could do it and get caught. But make sure, but you're going to have to pay something. So you know, and that's the way I actually talk to children, and I talk to them to give them that reality. That's the whole reality kick. Reality kick. But I also tell them, anything that you do, you have to work hard to do it, and you have to study hard, but you can do it. It's nothing you can't do it's nothing that you can't do, as long as you work hard to do it.
The permission to dream, as I would call it. It's a lot of people want great, but they just think that I can't do that. The permission to dream. No, you can dream big, bigger than you imagine, and that's okay. And whether that comes true or not, don't ever stifle yourself from dreaming, right? When you don't have a dream, when you lose that purpose, you kind of get lost in life because you no longer have a compass directing you towards where you want to get to. And even if the direction isn't super clear, you just type in a general area in the GPS, you'll kind of be able to figure that out as you get there, but don't stand still out of fear of never reaching it at all. I think that that's where a lot of people disqualify themselves from success. And that's just a shame in our community. But you especially talked about the next generation, right? Speaking life into the youth.
Right.
How do we continue to inspire the youth and the generations to come moving forward to continue excellence rather than stopping or feeling like they can't reach that goal?
By educating them, I feel by educating them toward greatness and showing them things of how people, books and reading of how people that strived hard to do certain things and how they succeeded in doing. To also speak is support them too, is to support them in what they do when they go to school. Don't just send them to school and you don't become involved with that. You be visually there, and to help them through that. And if they do, if something happens and they don't reach that goal, or still push them, well, okay, you didn't do it this, but you can do that, or keep going, and not having them to get that defeatist attitude that they won't be able to do that.
No, so there's a couple things that you said that I love. I love the consequence of your choice. And one of the things I say is, even if it's legal, even if it's something, whatever, when you make decisions, they do have an impact. Number one, that's really great. And number two, one of the things that I think is great also is modern technology. I have some young people in my life, and I'm like I take photos a lot for my memories. It doesn't always have to go on a gram. And I think that one of the things my mom would tell me is that back in the day, one of the ways we will begin to, I'm trying to think of tactical transition now, like tactical application. One of the things we used to have is, it seemed like every Black house had one of them big Bibles. Yes. And in the front of the big Bible, it would have your family history written in it. And now a lot of young people, do you even know what I'm talking about? My son don't even know what I'm talking about. But my big mom had one, my mom had one, my granny had one. Everybody had one of them big Bibles, and it had family history in the front. Another thing is, I would be like, why do some people collect all these obituaries? And I know on Saturday when I was there, it's like people, if you take the time to really read some of these obituaries, they might be long. And I used to say, oh my goodness, why is it so long? But that's another sense of that we're finally having some conversations we never had no more. And now this person is gone. They can't even give us more richness about that narrative. But those are two ways. What are some other ways that like younger people or people now utilizing all the technology that's out there can begin to explore their family history? I know you said on Saturdays you guys are there, but what are some other things people can do, or maybe even questions they can ask to start having those authentic conversations? And before you answer that question, this is the other thing I want to say. Like, I think about my mom. My mom came up here on a train at 9, I think it was, and I always tell her, I was like, man, Ma, like your story is you are always the exception, meaning that God had a huge plan for your life. And when she talks about it, sometimes she'll say what she doesn't have and what I'll say, and she will give all the glory to God. I said, but Mom, you need to get some details because God had a special, special plan. You were 14. number 14, and you were sent here to Buffalo at a time that technically you shouldn't even made it up here on the train, coming from Alabama all the way to Buffalo, where she grew up in Lackawanna. And like that process itself, you know, but yet God had a plan for you. So how do you encourage people, A, to start documenting, but like you said, be kind and tell the whole story, even if it feels like there's some secrets, there's values in sharing the whole truth on how you remember it. So I'm going to give it back over to you.
Oh, it's good that you mentioned the obituaries. As you know, a project of the BGSAD is the obituary. We are now working on volume 4, where we have obituaries that are on file and on display in the library. And that's a good way of using as research for a genealogy, because it also has a history of the person, and also it plays a part even further down the line. They can go, a family member can go who talks about, oh, your grandmother did this, your grandmother did that, and the child never seen them. They can go there and actually see a picture of their grandparent on file at the library. I had a habit of documenting things myself, and one of them was of a girlfriend of mine that died of cancer. And I remember when she was on Channel 7 and she was being interviewed, her son, who was a dancer, Williams, I call him Peanut, but he's a dancer. He's a dancer, and he was able to show his children, his mother, and they could actually hear her speak and actually actually do that. But documentation is very important. I just had a family member pass away. She was very rich in history, and she gave me a lot of the history on the Salter family, because she was down there. And one of the things that I did was I taped her voice so I can remember her voice speaking. And I did the same thing with another family member from the Craig side. I taped her voice and God rest her. I met her with that year, and we talked for a couple of times. She was on Facebook, and I got her history from her documented, and she died of COVID. But it was just wonderful to hear her clear up some things and to tell me about the history of the family. So all I can say is that when you start asking questions now of the people that are still living, and take as many pictures, and as I say, document the pictures on what was going on at that time, and go on to this, learn the sites that are, like, you have Ancestry, which is a paid site, but Family Search, which is by the Mormons, is a free site that you can go, and it has a lot of the information. In fact,
what is it called?
FamilySearch.org, and that's under the Mormon Church. And that was where I got a lot of my marriage licenses and things. I found a lot of that on there before I actually found it on Ancestry. So, and then there's other sites. You have the military sites that actually talk about talk about the wars and soldiers. In fact, this is a book I compiled of an ancestor of mine who was a Confederate soldier in the Civil War.
Oh, wow.
I got his record of his pension. I got his the war the battle he was in. Actually, even under General Hood, it was the Peachtree Creek battle. I actually got the history of that, and I compiled this together. And this is his actual headstone at our family church in Alabama. And this is his actual headstone. We have a church, the Carlton Hill Baptist Church, which is located in Bibb County, Alabama, where a lot of my family members are buried, and that's the history of that. But as far as keeping everything going, like I said, to start, they can come in on Saturday and start asking, we can help them. Also, there's blogs and different other sites online that you can also go on and hear, and they can help you to get started. But locally, you can come in. There also the library, the downtown library. Also
What
has
time on Saturdays?
on the second week. It's the second Saturday each month from 11 until 1. We are at the Meriwether Library.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of closing out the interview now.
Yes,
We're
okay.
up with time. I wanted to ask a question, which
sure.
we'll touch on next time. We got to get you back. But the question I want to ask her, I'll
Okay.
leave the viewers with in their mind, leaving your mind is how
Okay.
history moves us forward. I know we talked about a lot of taboo subjects in our history that we hide.
Yes.
Especially with us. We want it to look good. It got to look good on the outside, right? The inside is important. Vacuum your interior, but wash the outside every once in a while. You know what I'm saying? But that being said, I think there's a lot of conversations we need to have.
Yes,
a lot of things that we avoid or say, oh, that I don't identify with that. But it's history. And so I think there's a lot of conversations, a lot of shadows and taboos that we could really put on the table and begin to dissect when we go to, and really adjust to our history. But we'll talk on that next time because we're kind of leaving the station now. The hour moves fast. But as we leave out, are there some things you'd like to leave with the viewer, specific words you'd like to say, or any specific, again, contact points you'd like to reach out to and just reiterate for as we walk out?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on your show. It has been a wonderful hour, and I've enjoyed talking. I just hope I've hit and given some major tips for people to actually get started on the history. Yes. I also want to tell you about our book called Kindred Stories. It's Genealogy and the Family History, and it was written by members of the Buffalo Genealogical Society of the African Diaspora in Buffalo, New York. And the book is on sale on Amazon. It's on the Amazon and at Zawadi bookstores, and you can get it for about $20. And it's a book compiled of various people who submitted various research, and this is me here. This is me talking about my grandfather. But it's various research and how we got started and different things that we found out about our family. So I hope to see any of you, see some of you at the next meeting. We will be at the Meriwether Library on the second Saturday in December.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Have a good day, Buffalo. Hopefully you guys know your history as well. Have a good one. See you guys next week.
All right. Okay.
And I put those links on the Facebook Live too, so people can get them.